Uh, good to have everybody here. Liesl, we're happy that you're able to join us.
Great.
Join in anytime.
Okay.
And Ted was here a minute ago, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyway, maybe he'll show back up. Well, what I wanted to do today was we want to talk about 3 John a little bit. I'm hoping that after we talk about I'm hoping we can do that in a short enough period of time that we can I kind of wanted to recap very briefly some of the things we've learned or been reminded of by reading 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. We'll see if we have time for that. I'm not sure. It all depends. Mary, I don't know what we need to do. What are we going to do about next Sunday? Because this is my last Sunday.
I'm not the one deciding that.
You're so good at it, Mary.
Huh?
You're so good at it.
No, I have not had anything to do with the planning part. All I do is run this. I'm the technology person. So I don't know. You all are going to have to duke that out. I'm happy to tell you when the 10-minute warning is if we want to talk about that, unless somebody wants to jump in and volunteer.
All right. Does anybody have any ideas? Somebody willing to volunteer to teach or rope somebody else into teaching?
I can't teach because of my call schedule at work, but it would be nice to do the Book of Ruth if somebody could do that.
Well, John. As the resident specialist, what do you have to say?
I'm not sure the Old Testament guy has to be the only one who does an Old Testament book.
That's
especially
true.
a book like, I could do something on Ruth, but if there are plenty of other people, I think, who would have insights that they would want to share.
All right. Who wants to do it? Ruth. I should talk Kathy into doing it since Ruth is her middle name, but I'm not sure if I don't think I could constrain her. Do we even have anybody right now who's sort of in charge of the class?
This class you're talking about? This class has never had anybody in charge.
I think it's the duty of the new vice chairman of the church board.
I was going to say, Barry's teaching. That means he's in charge.
I've never seen that, Tom.
Y'all put him in charge, he's going to give you the responsibility to teach. So I'd be careful.
That's right. That's
I
right.
think it's in the bylaws, and I think there's also an exemption for the finance chair from teaching.
We never want the money changers teaching us.
All right. Well, I suppose we'll have to think on it and make a decision here in the next 2 or 3 days. So we'll be ready to go. Ted Thomas just showed up. We could get him to teach. We're trying to figure out what to do next, Ted. The suggestion is to do Ruth, but we need a teacher. You want to give it a try?
Ruth who?
Okay, next. All right. So if you have a suggestion or a thought or an idea, or better, if you decide to volunteer, then send me an email in the next 2 or 3 days, okay? I'm definitely, if nobody volunteers, I can just certainly say that I am not going to teach the next Johannine piece of literature, the Book of Ruth. Forget that. All right. Well, let's turn our thoughts to 3rd John now. I assume all of you have read it, and it is just barely the shortest of the 3 letters. This is in form, this is a letter very much like 2nd John, so the author states names himself immediately, the elder. And we've already talked about this before. Traditionally, this has come to be regarded as John the Apostle. So for convenience sake, I may refer to him as John. I'll try to refer to him simply as the elder. But the recipient is different this time. Instead of the chosen woman or the chosen lady, as in 2 John, who is the recipient?
Gaius.
Yes, Gaius. And we only know anything about Gaius from what is stated here. So it seems that he is a member, possibly a leader at a different church from the one where the elder is in residence. And the elder has received some information recently about Gaius. And so somebody tell us, what is that information that makes the elder happy?
He is healthy.
Pardon?
He is in good health.
Okay. And what else? What else did we find
But
out?
also, he's walking in the truth, so he is
Yes.
truthful.
Even better.
Yes, he's walking in the truth. Now, part of the problem of interpretation of 3 John is trying to figure out how much of the background of 3 John lies with this split that has taken place and this conflict between the elder and those who support him, those to whom he writes in 1 John, and then on the other hand, the other folk that he refers to in very strong language as what? What does he call them? Very strong term.
Antichristos.
Yes, the Antichrist. And if you really want to say something bad about somebody else, that's pretty much the height of it. So the part of the problem with interpreting 3 John is knowing how much of that is the background to 3 John. So, for example, when he says that Gaius is walking in the truth, if this other issue is very much to the fore, then you would tend to interpret his statement that Gaius is walking according to the truth to mean that he's with the elder in his contention that Jesus is the Christ, that Jesus has come in the flesh, and he is not sympathetic to this other group. Although in 3 John, there's no specific statement of that. The only specific thing that is said about Gaius here that would indicate that he's walking in the truth is what? What specifically has the elder found out about Gaius?
Well, he is welcoming these friends, these brothers who apparently are coming from the elder himself. So he's been an open and welcoming person.
Yes, he has. And so he's shown his love to them. And so the elder commends him for this and encourages him to continue to do so. Last week, I read a little section out of the early Christian book called The Teaching of the 12 Apostles, which was written roughly probably about the same time as 2nd and 3rd John. And it's interesting to compare what's said in the Didache to 2nd John, because both documents indicate that, at least in certain areas, it was customary for Christians for Christian prophets or Christian teachers to travel around from place to place and to visit different churches and to spend a little bit of time there and then to move on to the next place. And so this was one little section I was planning on sharing with you, but we're not able to do that. But at any rate, there is a section in the Didache where he devotes himself to traveling. He calls them apostles, but they're not apostles in the sense of the 12 apostles, but they are people who have been sent one church to go visit other churches and to do missionary work, and also prophets. And so he has to, in the Didache, the author has to give instructions about how these people are to be treated. And they are to be welcomed, and they are to be supported. But at the same time, you can tell from reading the Didache that there have been abuses. You know, I'm sure you're like me. You've seen a lot of signs in different places that you think there's a story behind that sign, right? There's something that happened that caused somebody to put that sign up there. I remember the hospital in LaGrange, Illinois, where Lee was born. I had a sign right along the front that said, and it was a very nice sign, very professionally printed and everything, and it said, "Don't even think about parking here." So just reading the Didache, you can sort of tell that there have been some abuses. For example, I think I told you last time, he says if they come through and they want to stay 1 day or 2 days, that's okay. But if they want to stay 3 days, they're false prophets. So, you know, there have been some abuses of this system. Now, the elder in 3 John doesn't say anything about the abuse of it. He just simply talks about how it's really important to support these people. And what reason does he give for the need to support these kind of folks? What does he appeal to as far as a motivation for putting these people up, which is always an inconvenience?
So that we can be co-workers in God's work.
Right. We can be co-workers. And these people who are traveling around, after all, they have denied themselves. So interesting enough, it says they accept no support from non-believers. I'm not sure exactly what the background of that is. I'm not sure. Do any of you have any ideas why he would say that? They don't accept support
There
from
were traveling philosophers in those days that sort of, put their hat out in front of them and spoke on street corners and expected people to drop coins in the hat, or whatever. So they were, in a sense, accepting support from anybody who wished to support them.
Right.
And, I think the Christians were careful about that.
Right.
Plus, I think it puts the onus on the church to take care of them. If you're saying the only people that are going to take care of them are you, Christians, if they're not accepting any support from non-believers, it's up to you guys. So it really puts the onus on the church.
Exactly. Lisa?
I was wondering if it might go back to culture. If you accept support from non-Christians, then you're not sure where that money came from or where that food came from. Has it been blessed by a pagan priest or something?
Right.
And then you don't taint the work of God that way.
Right. That may be a possibility as well. Have we not all heard a somewhat similar appeal made to us to support missionaries? These people have decided to, give up a lot of the luxuries that we enjoy in our culture and our place, and they're going on walking by faith to go to another country, and the appeal is look at what they've given up, look at the sacrifices they've made. Therefore, we should be able to make some sacrifices as well. I'm sure we probably all heard that kind of motivation used for missionaries. And I think that this is not exactly the same thing as our supporting missionaries today, but I think with some imagination, you can move from this situation to ours. Okay, so Gaius is on the elders' good list for sure. Now we come to the next fellow who's mentioned here, Diotrephes. What's the story with Diotrephes?
He's a bossy church guy who wants to be in control of everything.
I was going to say he was on the naughty list. So.
Yeah, yes, he definitely was. When I was doing this lesson, I vaguely remembered a sermon that I wrote when I was, and I try to forget all the sermons I wrote in my 20s and 30s, but this phrase came to mind: dictatorial Diotrephes. I'm sure that roused a sleepy congregation from the dead. But at any rate, what's the deal with Diotrephes? What's he been up to?
By the way, there's a great term for Diotrephes in the Greek here. The English says who likes to put himself first, but that's a single word in Greek. Protuon. Liking to be first. the great Greek word. We got to bring that into English.
Yes, and when you read that description of him, I suspect that for some of us, an image of a certain person comes to mind. Different for different ones of us, but we've probably all met or had dealings with someone who was related to Diotrephes here. So, I mean, he does not like the elder. So what's he done to insult the elder and get in his bad list? What did the elder do earlier that Diotrephes just refused to accept?
Well, he doesn't seem to be welcoming these people that he thinks they should be welcoming. And since he praises Gaius for doing that, it's obvious. And he's also challenging the elder's authority, which I'm sure doesn't go over well.
Yeah.
Well, not only is he not welcoming, but he's preventing other people from welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. And the elder, sometime earlier, had written a letter, right? He says he wrote something to the church. Presumably, that's the church where Diotrephes is operating. And there is some question as to whether the church in which Diotrephes was a part was the same church as the one that Gaius belonged to. And I did a little bit of reading, and before this lesson, I did a little bit of reading in Raymond Brown's commentary on 3 John. And after doing a little reading, I just had a headache. Had all the different positions and options that have been taken on these different issues, but one of our Church of Christ professors, Abe Malherbe, took the position that Gaius belonged to a different house church than Diotrephes, and that it was in the same city. So it was considered sort of one church, but different house churches. And then of course, there are others who think that they belong to the same house church. So there's a question there as to whether, exactly what the relationship was between Gaius and Diotrephes. Diotrephes does not, Gaius does not seem to realize that Diotrephes has been acting in this way, unless you assume that the elder is just telling Gaius stuff that he already knows, which I suppose is a possibility. But so he has ripped up a letter that the elder wrote to the church, right? And presumably refused to allow it to be read. That was the custom. You would write, if somebody wrote a letter to the church, then presumably it would be read before the church. And this is what Diotrephes has refused to do. And as you've already mentioned, he won't allow people to show hospitality to these traveling brothers who are obviously in fellowship with the elder, and he won't let other people do it either. So he is very hostile to the elder. Now, the question is, why? Is this because Diotrephes is one of the antichrists? Is it because he has a different that part of it, that he has a different understanding of who Jesus was, that he denies that Jesus came in the flesh? Or does this have to do more with, sort of an authoritarian tyrant? Most of us have been in churches where we've seen this work out, where some elder or some leader is very adamant on having their way. There may not be a doctrinal issue involved, but it's still a problem because of the person insisting on having their way. So there's disagreement there. John, what were you going to say? Can't hear you.
John.
Still can't hear you.
You need to unmute, John.
Yeah.
Unmute.
You're muted.
Oh, let me see. I can maybe. Let me see.
Can
There.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I was thinking we really don't have enough before us to know whether Diotrephes is being the unreasonable one or the elders being the unreasonable one. We can't assume just because we have this letter who's right in this argument, I don't think.
Oh, I smell the hermeneutics of suspicion here.
Well, we just don't have enough. We don't have the other side. That makes a big difference.
That's true.
True. Although canonically, the church, Big C, has decided that this elder was in the right and Diotrephes is in the wrong. Hence, its inclusion in the canon of Scripture, John.
So that's right. And one other thing too that I thought I might mention here, and I don't know exactly how to evaluate this. Some of the rest of you may have a different opinion. I don't know, but Raymond Brown makes the case that near the end of the first century, presbyter or elder was a term that was given to certain people in the church who were not eyewitnesses of the life of Jesus, but had direct contact with people who were eyewitnesses. And so Brown thinks that the elder who writes 2 John, 3 John, and 1 John was a person who had direct contact with John the Apostle and therefore saw himself as the bearer of John's testimony and of John's tradition. And it does seem to me that the elder regards himself as having a certain authority that that would suggest that he is in a highly respected place. For example, when he's writing to these folk in 1 John, these are people that are not members of his own congregation, and yet consistently throughout he refers to them as my little children. And furthermore, even in 3 John, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but he says in verse 4, when he's talking about Gaius, and Gaius is not a member of his church, but the elder says, I have no greater joy than this, to hear that my children are walking in the truth. To me, that suggests that the elder sees himself as having a certain authority over not only people in his church, whatever his house church was, but also in other churches nearby and in the vicinity. What do you think about that, Mark?
So I'm not. I actually am not convinced about the idea that these are people who necessarily are in line with eyewitnesses, but I do think this does cohere really well with the form of the church that we read about in Ignatius, and that's not too far away. So Ignatius is writing about 120 or so, and his letters consistently urge the idea that, and he uses the term bishop, episkopos, not elder, presbyteros,
Right.
but the slippage is back, you know, in Paul, the slippage goes back and forth. He uses the same term pretty much equally. For Ignatius, the bishop has substantial authority, and in almost all of Ignatius's letters, he impresses upon the local churches that they're not supposed to even have communion unless the bishop is present. So the Lord's Supper without the bishop present is inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of authority kind of becomes a pretty strong issue in the early second century. It's not too hard to imagine that may be the same at the end of the first century, same kind of authoritarian issue. And I think it's kind of interesting that that the elder here in the first part talks about the fact that that Diotrephes refuses to accept his authority.
Mm-hmm.
That language of authority is actually really kind of interesting. So I don't know what you make of it, but I think there's something going on here, maybe of the idea of a bishop with a lot of house churches in under his control, in which case the elder here may assume that he's the bishop, the authoritative figure for a number of these house churches, and they may not all be in the same city, but could be in the same province.
Right.
That
There's just a lot we don't know, and that makes it possible to come up with a lot of different theories. Ted?
I've got a question about that 9th verse too, and those of you whose Greek is, all of you, your Greek is better than mine. He says he doesn't epidekete us, and I don't see the word authority.
Yeah.
I don't see the word authority in that epidekete. Can you help us out?
Yeah.
He doesn't accept us.
Yeah, he doesn't receive us. It doesn't accept us or receive us is probably would be the better translation there.
But I think it's not too far from that to see him saying he doesn't he doesn't accept our oversight. He doesn't. It seems like Diotrephes does not accept the elders meddling. I mean, that's how he would put it. Of course, that's not the way the elder sees it, but Diotrephes, I mean, even if it just simply means he does not welcome us or want to have anything to do with us, it still clearly is a rejection of the elders' right to be interfering in all these cases, wouldn't you say?
I will also say we have about 8 minutes left, Barry.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
One of the thing about authority, let me tag on one of the things. It's striking to me that Diotrephes apparently has himself enough authority to expel people from the church. that is a kind of a singular authority for single individual, that he's taking for his house church the authority to be able to expel people when they offer hospitality.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, let's go on to letter is Demetrius, and this Demetrius is gets he goes down in Scripture, with a good report. So poor old Diotrephes, 2,000 years later, we're still.
You're coming in and out, Barry, and now you're out.
Well.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
All right. I'll hold my computer very still. Hopefully it won't go out again. So Demetrius, what's the deal with Demetrius? Who is this guy? Why is he mentioned here?
Could be the bearer of the letter.
Yeah, most people think he probably was the one who took 3 John to Gaius, and so the elder says he's a good guy. You can rely on him, and by implication, treat him well, give him some hospitality. He doesn't even pull out the 3-day rule on him like the author of the Didache did. So maybe he stayed longer than that. I don't know. So at any rate, the elder closes the letter just like he did with 2 John. I have a lot to say, but I'd rather do it face to face. And then he ends the letter with a remarkable statement here. Instead of referring to believers as brothers or some other term like that, what's the term he uses? Unusual. Friends. Now, I don't know this. I've never searched this out, but what's the official name for the Quakers?
Friends.
Yeah, Society of Friends. I'm guessing that they derive that from this passage and also maybe a passage or two in the Gospel of John. I've never researched that, but I suppose that's the case. Now, this word friends at the end is kind of interesting. There's one kind of parallel to it in Acts 27, verse 3, where Paul talks about visiting the friends, the Philoi, in Sidon, the city of Sidon. And so it's possible that he's using the term to refer to all the believers there at Sidon. I mean, I suppose it is possible that he's referring to a select group there, not everybody, but the ones that he knows. But it's also possible that he's referring to the whole group there. And one of the other things when we think about this word friends here that we should probably remind ourselves of is that in the Gospel of John, which this literature is very closely related, the author uses the word friend or the verb to love, philao. He uses that word interchangeably with the word agapetos and agapao. And there are several places where he does this. In John chapter 11, where it's talking about Jesus's love for Lazarus. Sometimes the one verb is used, sometimes the other verb is used. But the preeminent passage is in John 15, verses 13 through 15. Maybe, do we have time to read this, Mary? How much time do we have?
Over just 3 minutes. You could do it.
Okay, I'll do it. John 15, and starting with verse 13. John 15:13. This is Jesus talking to the disciples. You are my friends, and there's that word, if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. So Jesus is actually the one, according to this gospel, that initiates this usage. And you can easily see why, from this basis, Christians could refer to one another as the friends. Anybody want to comment on that or add anything to that? So we are all friends, right, in Jesus.
What's interesting is that in the first part of the letter, the emissaries that have been rejected at various points or who have come were all called brethren. So he uses adelphous,
Yes.
the brothers, but then at the very end here he shifts to friends. So friends seems to be a warmer reference than just brethren who seem to be functionaries. But
Right.
Here this is a very warm embrace. So it seems to be a little bit of a nuance.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It sort of reminds us that above all, as Christians, we are friends, and Jesus has made us so to him, and also to him first of all, and then to each other. All right. Well, one thing I wanted to do, just as a way of recap, is I just wanted to run through. I came up.
You have 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. All right. Here's my list of takeaways from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. The centrality of love, the cruciality of the humanity of Jesus, true incarnation, the importance and joy of fellowship among believers, the dialectic of sin in the Christian life. Sin can be forgiven, but it's also to be taken seriously and rooted out. Number 5, the present dimension of eternal life. Number 6, the cruciality of the cross and the atonement of Jesus by the cross, and the possibility of confidence before God, particularly in light of the coming of Jesus. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I like